What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney, aka A Shawty That Reads. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future literary content. Today's video is part 2 of my bookshelf tour. I'm not gonna keep y'all long. Let's get right into the video. Hello, welcome back to my bookshelf. We're slowly working our way down, so let's get started with row number 4. So starting us off, I have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This YA book is phenomenal. I read it first on my Kindle. I received the hard copy as a gift, and then I watched the movie. And since this is Shawty Reads and this is BookTube, y'all know the book was better. The next book I have is The Winter Soldier by Daniel Mason. I don't know what made me buy this book because every time I pick it up, I'm like, this isn't really my cup of tea. We're in Vienna, 1914. Lucius is a young medical student when World War I explodes across Europe. It's just not something I would normally read, but like it's a pretty book. That's probably why I bought it. Next up is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I have yet to read this book, but I know people really like Elizabeth Gilbert, and I remember I chose this one specifically because it sounded like a coming-of-age summer story, and those are like some of my favorites. Next is this nice, hefty collection of Langston Hughes poetry. I used to go to the park and flip through this last summer and just like underline all my favorites or take little notes, and I would just be there for hours because you see, you have a lot to work with here. Next up, I have Ask and It Is Given, Learning to Manifest Your Desires by Esther and Jerry Hicks. I have a video up already about this book and I could talk all day about it. If you want to change your life, if you want to start manifesting and living the life of your dreams and controlling your reality, it's this one right here. Next, I have Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah. I received this in a summer book exchange thing that I had going on last year, so I haven't read him yet, but I've heard amazing things. Next, I have a Basquiat graphic novel. Honestly, I feel like this book should be set out on display along with some of my other ones because it's so beautiful, and it's kind of hurting my heart that it's just like up there on the bookshelf with the rest of them. Next, I have The City of Wellness, Restoring Your Health Through the 7 Kitchens of Consciousness by Queen Afua. So this book is all about eating higher frequency foods to lighten the load on our bodies. Okay, she gets like really, really deep into it. I haven't read the book in its entirety yet. I've kind of flipped through, but I feel like it would be great to read in conjunction with Vibrate Higher Daily, Live Your Power by Layla Delia. Next up, I have Call Me By Your Name by Asimon. I actually received this book at a photo shoot. I was modeling for a brand, Street Grandma, and their tote bag was actually inspired by this book. I think I mentioned that in my What's in Your Book Bag video because that is the Street Grandma tote that I'm talking about. So that's how this book came into my possession. Next, I have The Self-Care Prescription, Powerful Solutions to Manage Stress, Reduce Anxiety, and Increase Well-Being by Robin L. Gobin. Okay, from Target. I need to start taking these 20% stickers off. But I remember buying this because I looked at the bag and I was like, what? Self-care Black woman author? Yes. Yes. Next up, I have Humankind, Changing the World One Small Act at a Time by Brad Aronson. This is one of those books that just reminds you that the smallest gesture can make the biggest impact in somebody's life. Next, we have The Morning Mind, Use Your Brain to Master Your Day and Supercharge Your Life by Dr. Rob Carter III and Dr. Kirti Salway Carter. So this book is all about your morning routine and how your morning routine is either going to set you up for success or failure. And it gets into the psychology of it all, so very, very interesting. Next up, I have Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. Okay, how the courage to be vulnerable transforms the way we live, love, parent, and lead. I love Brene. Give me anything by Brene and I'll read it. Daring Greatly is amazing. I always suggest reading The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown first, and then it really just sets you up for success when you read the rest of her books. Next on the shelf, A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Rum. This is a book about shame. This is a book about family. This is a book about women, resilience, It's fantastic. One of my favorite fiction novels of the year by far. Next up, we have An American Marriage by Tiare Jones. I read this book a while ago. Amazing. I think this is going to be a classic one day, up there with Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou, because this is it. If you haven't read this book, please go do so. Next, I have Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And here I go again with these little 20% off stickers. I have yet to read this book. She's a little thick, and I'm getting to the point where, like, the longer books, it's taking me a while to get through now, okay? Anything over, like, 270 pages, I'm like, hold on a second now. Next up, I have The Inheritance of Loss by Karen Desai. I picked this up because one of my professors recommended it. It's about the consequences of colonialism as it collides with the modern world. All I'll say is it feels like a book that a professor would recommend. Next on the shelf, I have Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian L. Weiss. So this book is about the true story of a prominent psychiatrist, his young patient, in the past life therapy that changed both their lives. This book is high-key nuts. Like, it's interesting. So if you're into past life therapy or thinking about doing that, I'd suggest reading this book before you do it. Next up, I have The Mothers by Brit Bennett. So I haven't read anything by her. I bought this book because I wanted to read it before I read The Vanishing Half, and I still haven't read either one, but you know, they're on my TBR, very far down on the list though, it seems. Next up, I have The Archer by Paulo Coelho. I found this at the flea market and I was so excited because the only other book I've read by him is The Alchemist. And I really enjoyed this read. I read it on Shoddy Speaks actually for IG Live. But on the inside flap it says, if you never take a risk, you will never know what changes you need to make. Next, I have Indelicacy by Amina Kane. I was in the mood for like a little itty bitty book when I bought this, and now I'm just, of course, not in the mood anymore, right? But it says, Kane's small but mighty novel reads like a ghost story and packs the punch of a feminist classic. So that just sounded really good to me at the time. Next up, I have His Only Wife by Peace Adzomeje. I love this book so much. I have a full review on my channel, but it's the story of a woman who's finding herself, who has all these expectations placed on her by this man's family. So she's just kind of navigating her way through those expectations and deciding whether she wants to be herself or the person that everyone wants her to be. And last on row 4, I have Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, a therapist, her therapist, and our lives revealed by Lori Gottlieb. I received this as a part of the summer book exchange that I was mentioning earlier, so I'm really excited to eventually crack this one open. And first on row 5, we have another therapy book. I clearly love therapy. This is a autobiography. It's called Group, How One Therapist and a Circle of Strangers Saved My Life by Christy Tate. So this is all about group therapy, and I remember purchasing this because I was like, oh my God, I could never imagine doing group therapy. So I bought this hoping that like maybe it would change my mind. But it's funny because Lori Gottlieb, author of the last book that I just pulled, says it's heartbreaking and hilarious, surprising and redemptive. So isn't that funny how that works out? I had no idea that those books were even that close to each other. Next, I have Narrative of William W. Brown, A Fugitive Slave. I picked this up at SO1 Books, I remember, because it says on the back, a standout among slave testimonies, the narrative of William W. Brown provides a revealing account of life as a slave in mid-19th century Missouri. So I just think whenever you can get your hands on a book like this, just do it, buy it, read it, learn someone's story, because how many slaves didn't have the opportunity to tell their stories, to share their stories with us. Next up, I have The Beauty in Breaking, a memoir by Michelle Harper. This is a somewhat recent purchase. I've been wanting to read this book for a long time. Michelle Harper is an African-American emergency room physician in a profession that is overwhelmingly male and white. Over the course of her life, as she faced her own disappointments and heartbreak, Harper came to realize that each of us is broken physically, emotionally, and psychically. Does that not sound fascinating to you? It's a memoir, it's about healing, it's about a Black woman breaking barriers and boundaries in the medical world. I gotta read it. Next, I have another Queen of Fua. This is Overcoming an Angry Vagina, Journey to Womb Wellness. I picked this up because I was taking birth control for years and years and years. I'm not a fan of hormonal birth control, so I bought this book to help me detox and make my vagina love me again. Next, I have Well-Read Black Girl by Gloria Edim. This is a collection of essays from Black authors who are writing about how important it is to find yourself in literature, to read about yourself, to see yourself. So this is one of those books where if you are a well-read Black girl, you want to have her on your shelf. Next up, I have Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. I haven't read this book yet, but I let my aunt borrow it and she gave it back to me the next day. She loved it. I know it's about how every woman has a secret life, so we'll get to her one day. Next, I have Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I really enjoyed this book. It's inspired by Mexican folklore, so I just really enjoy anything that is reminiscent of fairy tales. So for me, it's very like Cinderella meets Pandora's box, and she opens it, and then she meets a Mayan death god, and now we're going on this journey. So it was very lighthearted and easy to read. Next, I have Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora and Neale Hurston. This is just one of 2 copies that I have because this one's so beautiful. I just couldn't help myself. But I love Their Eyes Were Watching God. I could read it over and over again. And Janie is just a character that I really admire and aspire to be like. Next, I have Vitamins and Minerals from A to Z by Jewel Pookrum. This is very simple, straight to the point. It's a manual that gives the reader a complete course on how to use vitamins and minerals along with a clear description of their function. So, easy peasy, lot of information. Next up, I have Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I haven't read this book yet because this isn't a book where you can just speed read through and flip through. Like, this is very transformative, very powerful. So I'm waiting for the right time to sit down and just like dive in. So technically next on the shelf, I have my little hand bowl. She holds all my crystals. She adds a very nice aesthetic to the shelf. But next to her, I have Heal Thyself. This is a natural living cookbook by Diane Ciccone. It's a complete guide to natural living through vegetarian cooking and holistic juicing. So it's another one of my little cookbooks here. If I feel like I need some inspiration, or if I'm not eating the best, I'll flip through my little Heal Thyself and get some, ideas for a vegetable salad. Cauliflower and arugula salad. That actually sounds good. Next up, I have Sister Outsider, Essays and Speeches by Audre Lorde. I haven't read the full book. I flipped through and read a couple of the essays and speeches, and exceptional writing. Phenomenal writing. We're not surprised there. And I also just really like the cover of this copy specifically, so that's why I bought this one. Next up, I have A Girl is a Body of Water by Jennifer Nansabuga Makumbi. I just bought this book. I think it was in my book haul video, so I haven't read her yet, but it's another one of those nice thick ones. So when I'm in the mood to just like sit and read for 8 hours straight, this is definitely going to be it. Next, I have Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This book has gone through it. I was like reading this like a maniac last summer. I really like it. There's a lot that you can take from the book. You just actually have to practice what he's telling you to practice. And I think it's definitely one that I think he even says you want to read it at least 3 times. So next I have Reiki for Life by Penelope Quest. I bought this book because I didn't know much about Reiki, and this is just like a very simple book that explains what Reiki is and how it works. It gives detailed instruction in 1st and 2nd degree techniques, advises on how to become a Reiki master and teacher. So it's basically it's a Reiki 101. Next, I have Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments by Sadia Hartman. This book is so important because it's forgotten history, okay? These are intimate histories of riotous black girls, troublesome women, and queer radicals. It does get a little bit hard to read, but I feel like that's the least we can do to learn about forgotten history. Next up, I have the book of Night Women by Marilyn James. I've written a blog post that is still up on my website, shawtyreads.com, if you guys want to check that out. This is a fantastic book. It's one of the hardest books I've ever had to read, but God, was it worth it. You just for sure are gonna have to like take breaks because it's a lot. Very similar to reading a Toni Morrison novel in that sense. Next, I have Gather Together in My Name by Maya Angelou. So this is the book that you would read after reading I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And I actually just bought this book, so it's been a while since I've read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So maybe I'll reread that one and then read this one, because I know her autobiographies, I don't think you have to read them like a series, but I want to. Next up, I have Save the Cat, the last book on screenwriting that you'll ever need by Blake Snyder. This is a gift from a dear friend of mine, because you know I be dabbling in my little screenwriting. So this is supposed to be a really great book if you are trying to get into that arena. Last on the shelf and last to be discussed is Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid. I loved this book so much because it's so familiar. It's a coming of age. We've all been there. We've all been adolescents. We've all been awkward. We've all had that relationship shift with our parents where their expectations that they have of us start to change out of nowhere, and you're like, what's going on? Like, I'm not a kid anymore. Like, I have responsibilities. So it's a fun read that I would recommend to anyone because we've all been a kid before. And that ends part 2 of Shawty's bookshelf tour. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm having an amazing time filming these for you because it gives me an excuse to interact with my bookshelf even more. Just like last time, I will be leaving a link in the description with the list of every book mentioned in this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Oh, and don't forget to take your sea moss.